Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Conversation Corner, the podcast where we tackle everyday questions and offer a fresh perspective to make life just a little better. I'm your host, Emily, here to help you see the world through a more positive lens.
And I'm John, your co-host, ready to add a bit of humor and share my honest take on today's topic. Whether you're listening during your morning coffee, while commuting, or winding down for the day, we're thrilled to have you here.
So let me ask you something. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why does nothing ever go my way? Or, why am I so unlucky? Maybe you've had one of those weeks where everything seems to go wrong. Your alarm didn't go off, you spilled coffee on your shirt, and then got stuck in traffic.
Oh, I've been there. And on those days, it feels like the universe is out to get you. But what if the problem isn't the events themselves? What if it's how we're looking at them?
Exactly. That's what we're diving into today. The idea of luck. Not the magical win the lottery kind of luck, but the way we perceive the good and bad in our lives.
We'll talk about why we often focus on the negatives, how we can shift our mindset to see the positives, and what it truly means to feel lucky. Spoiler alert, it's not about four-leaf clovers or rabbit's feet.
By the end of this episode, you'll have a fresh perspective and some practical tips to help you recognize the good in your life, even when things seem tough. Because here's the thing. When we focus on what's going well, we start to feel like life is working for us, not against us.
And don't worry, we're not here to guilt you into thinking positive 24/7. We get it. Life can be frustrating. But today, we're sharing some simple ways to shift your outlook so you can feel just a little bit luckier one step at a time.
So grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's explore how to see the good side of life. Because who knows? By the end of this episode, you might just feel luckier already.
Let's get started.
All right. Before we dive into feeling lucky and focusing on the good, let's address something important. Why is it so easy to get stuck focusing on the bad things in life?
That's such a good question. I mean, why is it that you could have 100 great things happen in a day, but all you can think about is that one awkward conversation or the fact that you spilled coffee on yourself?
It's actually not your fault, John. There's something at play here called the negativity bias, and it's deeply rooted in how our brains evolved. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors lived in a world full of dangers. Wild animals, unpredictable weather, rival tribes. Their survival depended on noticing and remembering threats more than the good stuff.
So you're saying the caveman version of me couldn't afford to sit around thinking, wow, what a nice sunset, when there was a saber-toothed tiger nearby?
Exactly. Survival required focusing on problems and figuring out how to solve them quickly. Fast forward to today, and while we're no longer running from saber-toothed tigers, our brains are still wired to notice the bad stuff more than the good.
That makes sense. I mean, if you think about it, negative experiences stick with us longer. Like, I can clearly remember an embarrassing moment from middle school, but I couldn't tell you the nice compliments I got last week.
That's the negativity bias in action. It's why we replay awkward moments or failures over and over in our heads. Our brains are essentially saying, remember this so it doesn't happen again.
But it's not very helpful in modern life, is it? Like, sure, it's good to learn from mistakes, but focusing on the bad all the time can make you feel, well, unlucky.
Exactly. When we let negative thoughts dominate, it can feel like the universe is against us. We start to overlook all the good things that are happening, even if they're small.
And I guess that negativity bias shows up everywhere: work, relationships, even social media. One critical comment on a post can ruin your mood, even if you got 10 positive ones.
Yes. And on social media especially, people often compare their behind-the-scenes lives to someone else's highlight reel. That comparison can amplify the negativity bias, making us feel like we're falling behind or missing out.
So, what do we do about it? If our brains are wired this way, how do we stop focusing so much on the negatives?
Well, the good news is that while the negativity bias is natural, it's not unchangeable. We can train our brains to start noticing the positives more. It takes some effort, but small shifts in mindset can make a big difference.
And I guess that's what this episode is all about, right? Helping people retrain their perspective to focus on what's going well, not just what's going wrong.
Exactly. We're not saying you have to ignore problems or pretend everything is perfect. But by consciously looking for the good, you can balance out that natural tendency to focus on the bad.
Got it. So it's not about denying the bad stuff, it's about giving the good stuff equal airtime in your brain.
You nailed it, John. And that's what we're going to explore next. What it really means to feel lucky, and how shifting your focus can change everything. So now that we understand why we tend to focus on the negative, let's shift gears and talk about luck. What does it really mean to be lucky? Is it about winning the lottery or stumbling upon a pot of gold? Or is there more to it than that?
I'll admit, when I hear the word lucky, my first thought is someone who's constantly winning prizes, getting promotions, or having all the good stuff magically fall into their lap. You know, those people who seem like life is just easier for them.
That's such a common perception, John, but here's the thing. Luck isn't always about chance. Sure, some things are out of our control, like the circumstances we're born into. But a lot of what we call luck is actually about mindset and perspective.
Mindset, huh? So you're saying it's not just random good fortune?
Exactly. Let me give you an example. Think about two people who have the exact same experience. A flight gets delayed. One person might immediately think, "Of course this happens to me. I'm so unlucky. Now my whole trip is ruined." But the other person might think, "Well, at least I've got some extra time to relax or grab a coffee. Maybe this is a chance to catch up on my book."
So the difference is how they interpret the situation.
Yes, the situation is the same, but the way each person responds to it shapes their perception of luck. One person sees an inconvenience, the other sees an opportunity. That's the power of perspective.
That's really interesting. It reminds me of a saying I heard once. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. It's like if you're open to seeing the good in situations, you're more likely to notice opportunities that others might miss.
Exactly. And this idea is backed by research. Studies show that people who see themselves as lucky tend to approach life with more optimism. They're more likely to take risks, try new things, and connect with others, behaviors that naturally lead to more lucky outcomes.
So, lucky people aren't just sitting around waiting for good things to happen. They're actively creating their own luck through their actions and attitudes.
That's exactly it. Luck isn't just a roll of the dice, it's a mindset. People who focus on the positives and stay open to opportunities tend to attract more good things into their lives because they're paying attention to what's going well.
And I guess it's not about ignoring the bad stuff, right? It's more about finding the silver lining when things go wrong.
Right? Being lucky doesn't mean everything goes perfectly all the time. It means choosing to focus on what's good, even in challenging situations. For example, losing a job might feel unlucky at first, but it could lead to an even better opportunity down the road.
It's funny you mentioned that. I know someone who lost their job during the pandemic, and at the time, they were devastated. But that situation forced them to reevaluate their career path, and now they're doing work they absolutely love.
Exactly, that's a perfect example. Luck is often about how you frame the events in your life. It's less about what happens to you and more about how you respond to it.
Okay, so let me see if I've got this. Being lucky isn't just about chance or circumstance, it's about mindset, perspective, and creating opportunities through your actions.
You've got it, John. And that's what we want our listeners to take away. Luck isn't something you wait for. It's something you can cultivate by focusing on the positives and staying open to possibilities.
I love that. So if you're listening right now and thinking, I'm not a lucky person, maybe it's time to ask yourself, are you noticing the good things in your life? Because chances are they're already there. You just need to start looking for them.
Exactly. And coming up, we're going to dive into some practical tips for shifting your perspective and creating more luck in your everyday life. Stay tuned. All right. Now that we've talked about why we tend to focus on the negatives and what it really means to be lucky, let's get into the heart of the episode. How can we train ourselves to see the good side of life, even when things feel tough?
That's the big question, isn't it? I mean, it's one thing to understand that focusing on the good is helpful, but it's another thing to actually do it, especially when life throws curveballs your way.
Exactly. But the good news is it's totally possible to reframe your mindset and start noticing the positives more often. It just takes a bit of intention and practice. Let's walk through some strategies that anyone can use to shift their perspective and see the good side of life.
Tip 1. Start a gratitude practice.
One of the simplest and most powerful ways to train your brain to focus on the positive is by practicing gratitude. And I don't mean you have to write a full essay about everything you're grateful for. Just jotting down 3 things every day can make a huge difference.
3 things? That sounds doable. So it could be as simple as I'm grateful for my morning coffee, a sunny day, and the fact that I didn't hit traffic on the way to work.
Exactly. And the beauty of this practice is that it forces you to actively look for the good, even on tough days. Over time, you'll start to notice more and more positive moments throughout your day because your brain is being trained to seek them out.
That's interesting. I've heard that gratitude can actually rewire your brain to be more positive. It's like a mental workout. You're strengthening your positive thinking muscles.
That's exactly right. Research shows that gratitude practices can increase happiness, improve relationships, and even boost your physical health. So, if you want to see the good side of life, start by focusing on what's already good.
Tip 2. Reframe negative experiences.
The next tip is all about reframing. When something bad happens, instead of thinking, "Why is this happening to me?" try asking, "What can I learn from this?" Or, "Is there a silver lining here?"
Oof, that's a tough one, especially in the moment. Like, if I get a flat tire, I'm not exactly thinking, what's the silver lining? I'm thinking, why is my life falling apart?
I get it, John. Reframing isn't about pretending that everything is fine. It's about finding meaning or growth in the situation. For example, if you get a flat tire, maybe it's an opportunity to practice patience or remind yourself to check your tires more often in the future.
So, it's less about ignoring the inconvenience and more about shifting your focus to what you can control or learn.
Exactly. And reframing doesn't always have to be deep. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, "At least I caught this problem before it got worse." Or, "Now I have an excuse to listen to my favorite podcast while I wait for help."
Nice plug for our podcast there, Emily. But seriously, I like this idea. It's about finding a small positive, even in frustrating situations.
Tip 3. Celebrate small wins. Another way to see the good side of life is to celebrate your small wins. It's easy to overlook the little victories because we're so focused on the big goals. But those small steps are what get you to the finish line.
That's true. Like if your goal is to get fit, instead of beating yourself up for not running a marathon, you could celebrate the fact that you went for a 10-minute walk today.
Exactly. Acknowledge the effort you're putting in no matter how small it seems. This not only boosts your confidence, but also keeps you motivated to keep going.
So it's about shifting your mindset from, I haven't achieved my big goal yet, to look at what I've already done.
Right. And the more you celebrate those wins, the more you'll start to notice progress in other areas of your life too.
Tip 4. Surround yourself with positive influences.
Let's talk about the people you surround yourself with. If you're constantly around negativity, it's hard to stay positive. Surrounding yourself with people who lift you up and encourage you can make a huge difference.
That's so true. Have you ever noticed how being around certain people can totally change your mood? Like you hang out with someone optimistic, and suddenly you feel lighter and more energized.
Absolutely, positivity is contagious, just like negativity is. That's why it's so important to spend time with people who inspire and support you. And if you can't find those people in your immediate circle, look for them in books, podcasts, or online communities.
Good point. Sometimes even just listening to someone positive, like say us, can help shift your perspective.
Tip 5. Practice mindfulness. The final tip is mindfulness. Sometimes, seeing the good side of life is as simple as being fully present in the moment. When we're caught up in worries about the past or the future, we miss out on the beauty of what's happening right now.
Like enjoying a beautiful sunset or even savoring your favorite meal instead of rushing through it.
Exactly. Practicing mindfulness helps you slow down and appreciate the little things. It could be as simple as taking a few deep breaths, noticing the sounds around you, or really paying attention to the taste of your coffee in the morning.
I like that. It's a reminder that life isn't just about the big milestones. It's about the small, everyday moments that make up the journey.
So those are our top tips for seeing the good side of life. Practice gratitude, reframe negatives, celebrate small wins, surround yourself with positive influences, and be mindful of the present moment.
It's not always easy, but with a little intention and effort, you can train your brain to focus on the positives instead of getting stuck in the negatives.
And the best part? The more you practice these habits, the more natural they'll become. Before you know it, you'll start noticing all the little ways life is working for you instead of against you.
All right, now that we've covered how to see the good side of life, let's move on to a fun, interactive exercise to help you put these tips into practice. Stay tuned.
All right, listeners, now it's time for a little exercise to help you start seeing the good side of life. Wherever you are right now, whether you're driving, walking, or just relaxing at home, take a moment to participate in this simple activity with us.
Don't worry, you don't need anything fancy for this, just yourself and maybe a pen and paper if you're not multitasking. If you're driving or can't write, don't sweat it. You can do this mentally too.
Here's what I want you to do. Think about today. It doesn't matter if it's morning, afternoon, or evening, just reflect on what's happened so far. Now, ask yourself this question. What are 3 things that went well for me today?
It doesn't have to be anything big. In fact, the smaller, the better. Maybe you got to enjoy a hot cup of coffee this morning. Maybe the weather was nice when you stepped outside. Or maybe someone smiled at you in the grocery store.
Take a moment to really think about those 3 things. If you're able to, write them down. And as you do this, notice how it feels to focus on the good.
I'll go first. Okay, 3 good things about my day so far. 1. I managed to get out of bed on time, which is a win for me. 2. My favorite song came on the radio during my drive here. 3. And when I got to the studio, Emily had already brewed coffee for us.
Aw, John, that's sweet. All right, my turn. Here are 3 things I'm grateful for today. 1. I woke up to my cat purring on my chest. Such a cozy way to start the day. 2. I got a thoughtful text from a friend I hadn't heard from in a while. 3. And I'm grateful for this podcast because getting to have these conversations with you and our listeners is one of the highlights of my week.
That's awesome, Emily. And see, even on a regular day, when nothing earth-shattering happens, there's always something good if you take the time to notice it.
Now it's your turn, listeners. Pause this podcast if you need to and think of your 3 things. Write them down or say them out loud. And here's a bonus step. Share them with someone. Text a friend, post them online, or even tell us in the comments section.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. What went well for you today? And how does it feel to focus on the positives, even for just a minute or two?
Remember, the more you do this, the easier it becomes. Over time, you'll naturally start noticing the good things without even trying. It's like building a muscle. The gratitude muscle.
And hey, don't forget, those small moments of gratitude can make a big difference in how you see the world. So keep at it, and you might just find yourself feeling a little bit luckier every day.
All right, great job, everyone. Now let's move on to some key takeaways to wrap up today's episode.
So we started by talking about why it's so easy to focus on the negative. Thanks to something called the negativity bias, our brains are naturally wired to notice and remember bad experiences more than good ones. It's a survival instinct, but it doesn't always serve us in today's world.
Then we reframed what it means to be lucky. We learned that luck isn't just about random chance or good fortune. It's often about perspective, how you choose to see the events in your life. When you focus on the good, even in tough situations, you create opportunities for more positivity and growth.
Next, we got practical and shared some tips for seeing the good side of life. To recap, 1. Practice gratitude. Writing down 3 things you're grateful for every day can shift your mindset over time. 2. Reframe negative experiences. Look for lessons or silver linings in challenging situations. 3. Celebrate small wins. Acknowledge the little victories to build confidence and motivation. 4. Surround yourself with positivity. Whether it's people, books, or even podcasts, positive influences make a big difference. 5. Practice mindfulness. Slow down and appreciate the small, present moments in your life.
And we wrapped it up with an interactive exercise where we challenged you to identify 3 things that went well for you today. It's such a simple practice, but it's incredibly powerful for shifting your perspective.
So here's our actionable thought for the day. Take a moment right now or at the end of your day and ask yourself, what went well today? Write it down, share it with someone, or just reflect on it quietly. The more you do this, the more you'll start to notice how much there is to feel lucky about.
And remember, life isn't perfect and it's okay to have tough days. But by choosing to focus on what's going right, you can bring more balance and positivity into your life. It's not about ignoring the bad, it's about giving the good equal attention.
Exactly. And if you ever catch yourself thinking, am I lucky? Just pause and remember, luck often comes down to how you see the world.
We hope today's episode inspires you to start looking for the good and appreciating the small, lucky moments in your life.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you shared it with a friend or left a review. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next conversation. Next week, we'll be talking about how to stop overthinking and take bold action in life.
Thanks for joining us today on Conversation Corner. Remember, keep noticing the good, stay curious, and we'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone.